LSU has just gotten a commitment in the transfer portal from Middle Tennessee State punter Grant Chadwick. Now, I'll tell you this, and y'all, if you listen to me, if you listen to Matt, if you listen to the morning show, if you listen to whoever you listen to on YouTube or in podcast form, anyone that was at practice in August told you this punting situation looks really bad. And I can tell you that it did. I don't claim to be a special teams expert, but I can watch guys sit there and hit wounded ducks that don't go very far and tell you that's not very good. And we saw a lot of that in August. You had Peyton Todd, who had been in the program for a couple of years, was the number one punter in the country coming out of high school, but hadn't really had that opportunity. And then you had Blake Oxendorf come in. He was an all-conference punter at Tech. Like, okay, well, they'll compete and they'll figure it out. And what ended up happening was they split the duties. They had 30 kicks on the year. Peyton Todd took 18 punts. Blake Oxendorf took 12. They averaged 39.7 yards per punt. That was dead last in the Southeastern Conference. They had 12 of the 31 punts, well, 30 punts, there was one extra. 12 of the 30 punts were down inside the 20-yard line. LSU only punted the ball 50-plus yards one time the entire season. I wouldn't submit, watching this team play for the entirety of 12 games, that punting was an abject disaster. It wasn't like they were shanking it all over the place or they were snapping over the punter's head. They just weren't very good at punting. And I don't know what the future holds for Peyton Todd. I think Oxendorf is out of eligibility. I'll have to go check that. This is new news. He is. Okay. So Oxendorf will move on. I don't know what the future holds with Peyton Todd. They needed to find someone to come in and potentially help them with punting. I can't tell you much at all about Grant Chadwick other than the fact he averaged 43.4 yards per punt, which is 4 yards better than LSU did last year. I can tell you this. In Pete Nakos's Twitter, the picture of Grant Chadwick has him posing like a golfer, which means he just probably pinned one inside the 10 and struck the golfer pose. I appreciate that as someone who enjoys the sport of golf. How much that correlates to his ability to punt? Probably zero. That's all I know about Grant Chadwick. But LSU needed an infusion of some talent in the punting situation, and they appear to have gotten that in Grant Chadwick. Now, who's on the way out? You obviously want to know that. Is it a starter? Is it a key piece? Not really. A.J. Swann has filed the necessary paperwork to enter the transfer portal. Swann, of course, transferred into LSU from Vanderbilt. Another situation where LSU got a guy who had started some games with an SEC team to come in and fill a backup role. It's not unlike Michael Van Buren, who started for Mississippi State for 7 games this year, and he's coming in to play a backup role. Swann's big, physical, wasn't great at Vanderbilt, but that was a really bad situation he was in. You saw him come into the game against Oklahoma, didn't look great in that game in abbreviated action when Nussmeier went out with that injury in the second quarter. So Swann will look elsewhere. So what does this mean for LSU's quarterback situation? Well, you've got Garrett Nussmeier, and he's your starter. And you've got Michael Van Buren coming in, who has started games in the SEC. And then you've got Colin Hurley. Ricky Collins has moved on. A.J. Swann has moved on. 3 quarterbacks is playing with fire a little bit. Now, I'm not suggesting this is some sort of roster mismanagement from LSU, because it's not. The reality is it's hard to get to 4 quarterbacks in a given time. LSU played through this year with 4 quarterbacks. One of them was an early enrollee who came in with no anticipation of playing whatsoever. That, of course, was Colin Hurley. So I don't know if there's anybody available that LSU can go get. I think they've got eyes on one freshman quarterback, the kid who was committed to North Carolina, and then Mac Brown retired or was fired or whatever that happened in North Carolina. So he is potentially going to hold off. He has held off on signing. He's going to sign in the spring period. Maybe LSU can get him, and if you can bring him into the mix, great. I'm okay with going into the mix with a 5th-year senior in Nussmeier, with a 2nd-year player that was been an SEC starter in Van Buren, with a 2nd-year player in Colin Hurley, and then with a true freshman. That is about as good as you can do. The days of having a deep quarterback room with, a senior, 2 juniors, and 2 sophomores, all who were 4-star recruits, like that day left 12 years ago. You've just got to play musical chairs at quarterback and hope that you've got the right guy at the top, and then let the other guy fall where they may. I've told you multiple times over the last 3 days that I thought it was a really good job of threading the needle by LSU to get Michael Van Buren to campus. I don't know if Michael Van Buren is going to ever start a game at LSU. I don't know if he's going to be a first-team All-American or win a Heisman at LSU. I don't know if he's going to transfer and play quarterback for Alabama next year. I don't know anything about Michael Van Buren's future. You can't know anything about these guys' futures at this point. But if I look at LSU's quarterback situation right now, I think they've got a really good one at the top in Nussmeier. I think you've got a proven commodity in the SEC in Van Buren. I think you've got some talent in Hurley, and then you probably need to go get one more. The loss of Swann, he came in against Oklahoma. That's a guy who he can play college quarterback. I don't know if it needs to be at LSU, quite frankly. So I don't mean to disparage a young man, but I mean you saw the situation. So it's probably best for him that he does look to transfer and see what kind of greener pastures await him. So if you're keeping score at home, that's a defection from A.J. Swann. That is an addition for LSU at the punter spot with Middle Tennessee transfer Grant Chadwick. Was that his name? I got to pull it back up. Grant Chadwick is the punter for Middle Tennessee State. Beck, you said something interesting there in the break that LSU wasn't that bad at punting this past year. I would disagree. I think they were not good.
Well, the average the thing about the average punting, the yards average is it can be misleading because of the fact that if a team is consistently punting, around the 40 or 50, they're not trying to punt it more than 40 yards. Wouldn't
you pin more than 12 of your 30 punts inside the 20?
That's not great. I would agree with that. But I would say that they were average. I didn't think they were below average.
I'm going to do some research here, and it's going to be on the fly. I want to see what Blake Oxendorf averaged at Louisiana Tech, where he was all conference, because you realize, when you get a punter transfer, that should just immediately translate exactly.
Yeah, it should.
If a guy runs for 1,400 yards in D2 and transfers up, that may not. But punting seems like it would be something that would immediately transfer over. If you look at all conference at Tech, I'm looking for. He averages 40 for his career. Oh no, at Division I, 53 punts, 45.7 yard average. So his average went from 45.7 this year, and it dipped to 40. Now, he was the one they used more often inside the 20. He had 7 inside the 20, so that's probably what you're looking at there.
Yeah.
But it stands to reason that, Peyton Todd averaged 41 yards a kick. Oxendorf's averaged 45 at Tech. You would think he could do that at LSU. And it also created a situation that this never bit him, but I talked to Bob Diaco for my pregame interview before I think it was the Oklahoma game. No, second to last game. It was Vanderbilt because I did Jake Flint for the last game. So I talked to Bob Diaco, and he said when you have a situation like around the 38-yard line or so, you would have the special teams ready and the offense ready to go for a fourth down, where you could go for it, where you had to send in a sub package. You could send in one punt team or the other punt team, depending on what happened on that third down play. I think at that point, you're kind of overdoing it. I think LSU should be able to have a guy who they can trust to boom it 53 yards when that needs to happen and to pin it inside the 8 when that needs to happen. And it just didn't have that this year. They were playing musical chairs.
They were. And, you would hope that this guy, Chadwick, coming in can take that role. Do
we like the golf celebration?
Yeah, of course. That's a classic. I don't know if Pat McAfee was the first one to do it, but I remember him being pretty famous for it. But also maybe, I don't know. It's just at this point, Peyton Todd probably is what he is. I don't know how much better you get over 5 years as a punter, but maybe if he can get his technique sharpened up. But I don't know, man. That was kind of one of those wondering what happened there. He was the top punting prospect when he came into LSU, but he just couldn't figure it out for some reason.
Dude, going out there in August, it was, a bunch of schmoes like us, the sports writer brigade that was out there were like, this is not great. Nobody's asking us to draw up the split zone run, to draw up the counter play. Nobody's asking us to how to dissect the cover 2. But we can watch dudes try to punt and go, that's not very good. It was a bad August. I would submit, as I said at the top of the segment, it was not a disaster punting wise. You've seen college football teams who have a punter who gets the shanks and is punting 8-yard punts 3 or 4 times over the course of 3 games. That never happened with LSU. They never boomed it, and they didn't do a great job of pinning balls inside the 20. So they'll look elsewhere with Grant Chadwick and see if they can happen things. Incidentally, as I just see on the Twitter feed, A.J. Swann is going to join the team at the Texas Bowl. So that's a pretty rare thing that a guy would get in the transfer portal and then play in the game. But he is going to do that. So interesting that you'll have that from A.J. Swann. That kind of leads me to believe he kind of liked his time here, just realizes the writing's on the wall. I'm probably not going to play here, so if I would like to play some more football, probably need to head elsewhere. So that'll be the news of the portal for the time being, although if you want to hear what I think will happen soon in the portal coming up in the next day, you can go back to the top of the show where I talked about a couple of linemen that I think LSU is in the mix for, 3 of them, in fact, that they hope to get here in the next 48 hours or so. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.